Friends, I'm standing in front of Coco, or maybe it's Avatar. Honestly, I'm not sure which new Disneyland this is, but I am sure of one thing. I believe this is where Disneyland Forward begins. Brickey here, breaking down why this giant warehouse might be the first real sign that Disneyland Forward is finally starting to happen. Before we get into today's Disneyland Forward video series, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And hey, if you want to support the channel, grab your own 1955 undefeated ball cap right now. We even made them in XL sizes for our friends at Watch that got that big brain. Let's get started with today's video. I'm so excited you showed up. Before we break down why this warehouse might be the historic birthplace of Disneyland Forward, let's start with what we always do on this channel. We study Disneyland's past so we can better predict its future. Because when we look at how Disneyland built its two newest lands, Toontown's expansion and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, a very clear pattern starts to emerge. These lands didn't appear out of nowhere, they replaced something. So let's take a closer look at what Disney's Backstage operations gave up so that guests could have Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and figure out what exactly had to disappear to make it possible. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge didn't just appear out of thin air. It was carved out of 14 acres of land that used to be Backstage support. And there's no better place to start than the most unexpected sacrifice, the pony farm. For decades, tucked behind Frontierland, Disneyland operated the Circle D Ranch, its own private stable for Main Street's horses and other animals. Originally nicknamed the Pony Farm, the Circle D was more than just a barn. It was also the home to Disneyland's original caretakers, the Popes. And the Popes actually lived right here on Disneyland property for decades in a modest house. Now, the Popes is an entirely different video. Comment below if you'd like for me to make the next Hey Brickey documentary about the Popes, because it is a fascinating story. They lived here. It's a story that I would love to tell. If you pinky swear, you'll watch it. There were feeding stations, grooming stalls, offices, and even a massive exercise arena for the horses to stretch their legs in between their shifts, and also just to run wild. That's exactly where today you fly the Millennium Falcon. The courtyard that I'm standing in right now, where you've likely had your photo taken, this used to be the Pope family's front yard. This corner of Smuggler's Run sits exactly where the stables and care facilities once stood. Disneyland traded a working ranch for a working starship. In 2016, the Circle D Ranch was demolished, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was actually the beginning of a much better one. Disney built a brand new 5.5 acre ranch in Norco, California. Modern, roomier, and much quieter for the animals' mental well-being. Now the Disneyland horses are trucked in for a few days at a time to work in the park, with a small on-site barn to house them during their multi-day stay, and that barn is just on the outskirts of the Jungle Cruise. This creative problem solving is much better for the horses, and it also allowed Disney's Imagineers to design a premier attraction with a blank slate of Earth to mold and construct in the image that they wanted, to allow their guests to fully experience their dream, my childhood dream, of finally getting to fly the Millennium Falcon. So if Disneyland was willing to trade a pony farm for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, what did they trade to give us the ability to rise? So literally, right here, right on the corner here, is where the horse stables and facilities started. That is wild to think about the difference that one space can have in its history. In 1955, the Disneyland Railroad used to loop around the park and then slip behind the berm, right into the northwest corner of Disneyland. And the spot where the train would exit the park is exactly where you and I exit Rise of the Resistance today. How wild is that? And it was back here where Walt Disney built something that few guests would ever know that existed. A simple rectangular building, nothing special to look at, but it was the very first train maintenance barn for the Disneyland Railroad. And it's set here. This was Walt's original roundhouse, his engine barn. It was where Walt kept his prized possessions that he paid for himself, and it inspired the whole damn thing. And in many ways, it was the beginning of everything, and it all happened right here. This is where the first stage of Disney logistics would have to play out. As time passed and Disneyland grew, the original roundhouse was replaced by a larger facility that right now sits on the outskirts of It's a Small World. When your train passes over a road, if you go to the left, that's where the train and the monorail go sleep. But even when it would get moved, this corner of the park quietly kept working away on building and maintaining the Disneyland story. Because the train barn became a machine shop, and new buildings were added all around it. And together they formed what Disneyland called the West Service Area, home to artists, builders, caretakers who shaped the park's story and took care of it day after day. Today, this is where you can see cast members exiting or starting their shifts off the side of the trusty Disneyland tram. One of the things that existed back in this space was the Disneyland sign shop. I think Disneyland sign painters are some of its greatest storytelling heroes. This is where craftsmen hand-painted every name, every plaque, every attraction marquee, and every font that would communicate with us inside the park. And where we walk through the queue today to wait for our turn for Rise of the Resistance, that's where the paint shop would sit, with its own paint lab, sandblasting bay, where Imagineers developed Disney's signature patina techniques to age props with every story-driven detail. That all happened right here, where we wait to get onto the attraction. And beyond these hills, as we first enter Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, was the sheet metal shop, where craftsmen shaped everything from railings to rocket fins. This is what you need to do to make the world look differently. You need craftsmen that can make that vision happen. Things in Disneyland used to not be able to be bought off the shelf. They had to be hand fabricated. And this trend goes back several chapters in the Disneyland story. Let's take the Disneyland Mill, for example. Its last location was where Hungry Bear sits today. However, it started out at the Disneyland Opera House in the opening years, and even before that, it was on the Burbank Studio, just showing how since the very beginning of the problem solving of Disney, lots of locations have had to move several different times. The creative problem solving of Disneyland is what sucked me into this in the first place as a designer. I could easily see that there was a SimCity nature to everything that was happening all around me. Because Disneyland is burdened by its size and its surroundings, makes it one of the greatest design challenges of all time. That sucked me in. Hook, line, and sinker. In the mill is where wood is carved. It's cut and transformed into custom architectural pieces you could never grab off the shelf in a store, either because it's grossly outdated, or even better, it's something that never existed before. The mill, the metal shop, the sign shop, the paint shop, this is where imagination first touches reality. And in later years behind me would be the horticultural department, dedicated to preserving Walt's original vision of Disneyland being a living garden and not just a place full of off-the-shelf carnival rides. It was also where the cycle shop existed, not sure what they did there, and environmental services, handling the quiet magic of cleanliness, safety, and upkeep. It's all the things that we don't think about until we see they're not actually being done properly. And then you really think about it. And even at one time, there was a service station over there at the Winston Street exit to allow all the vehicles to power back up for their next Disneyland mission. It is not an exaggeration to say that this is where Disneyland was both made and maintained for several decades. And today, in the exact area where the X-Wing fighter stands and where Rise of the Resistance begins, this is where the Craftsman Zone was cleared and the service bay became the queue that we all walk through. The machine shops that kept Disneyland pristine decades ago, they're all gone. And while there was something poetic about having these workers just a tow motor's drive away from every attraction in the park, it may not have been the best use of space. Because the truth is, these kinds of operations can happen almost anywhere. But there are few places inside Disneyland's perimeter where you can build something as massive and complex as Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. That has to be put in a very specific location. And so in the later years, exactly where Rise of the Resistance, the ride, sits today is where the service garage once sat. The service garage maintained the fleet of vehicles, from parking lot trams to service trucks to ride vehicles. So the designers made a choice: move the makers to make more magic. So this is what it takes to create an expansive 14-acre land inside of Disneyland. And if they were going to build Avatar next, we'd be looking at a very similar case study. But what if this new warehouse wasn't bought to make room for an entire land? What if it was built to start something much smaller, but equally as important to the future of Disneyland? For our next example, let's jump over to our next door neighbor. Let's go to Toontown. Because to build Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Disneyland didn't remove a ride. They removed the people who make the magic happen. Tucked behind the cartoon hills of Toontown was a large backstage facility dedicated entirely to entertainment support. It housed costuming and wardrobe where cast members got their Mickey suits, princess dresses, and parade gear. I mean, Mickey got his costume. It also would include cosmetology rooms for character makeup and hairstyling. It housed the entertainment offices and dressing rooms. It was where performers would start and stop their day at Disneyland. This wasn't a warehouse full of storage. This was a warehouse full of the people that bring the Disney characters and the Disney story to life. And all of it, every costume rack, every mirror, every break room was cleared out to make room for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. It's easy to forget how much backstage is required to create a front stage moment. And this warehouse was huge, but so is the adventure that we take with Mickey and Minnie. By the way, Goofy, completely innocent. Mickey is clearly to blame for this one. And that brings us back to the warehouse where today's video started. If Disney is willing to move an entire costuming operation out of Toontown to make room for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, could this warehouse be the next move in that same playbook? And what if this isn't for an entire land, but for one attraction? And what if that one attraction is Coco? Because there's only one way Coco ends up at Pixar Pier. That's if Disney clears the backstage behind it. If Disney really does plan to start construction on Coco in 2026 as promised, we probably will rule out Hollywood Backlot. That location would require a massive rework of the Manchester Avenue parking lot to a parking garage and a complete reassignment of DCA's infrastructure. It's not impossible, it's just pretty complicated. So the safe bet is they put it behind Incredicoaster. Could easily be tucked into the backstage triangle north of Catella Avenue, with guests entering through the Pixar Promenade or even through the exiting parade gate entrance. And in that triangle, there are three main buildings that Disney would have to find a way to move that into a different part of the park. That's where this comes in. And in that triangle, there are three main buildings. One supports DCA's parade entertainment team, and another appears to be a break space or backstage offices. And a third seems to store dozens of outdoor vending carts, those churro stands, popcorn wagons, and the mobile snack and merch machines that chase you down every day at the park. But here is the catch. You can't store a parade off-site, and you're not going to be trucking vending carts from 2 miles away every morning. But what you can do is clear out whatever operations that can be moved. And that's where this warehouse comes in. This thing is absolutely massive. And even though there's nothing exciting to see here whatsoever, and I'm obviously not going to trespass, I did think it was important to show you how big it was and to actually come here and see it with my own eyes so I could understand they have a lot of room to play with here. And let's take it a step further. Even if the operations here went a little bit further, the park operations moved to here, you can see how everything can just get moved piece by piece until finally they get the perfect fit for whatever their goal may be. I absolutely love all of the problem solving that Disney has to put into growing Disneyland because of its rare space. This type of stuff excites me. If it excites you too, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also check out our Disneyland Forward playlist. I've been breaking this down for over a year now like no one else has, getting deep into the design details that have me so excited for what's coming next. Just a few miles down the road from Disneyland and on Cerritos Ave, which by the way, used to cut through where Disneyland is today. This road at one moment was right on the edge of where the firehouse is in Town Square. Disney paid $124 million for a massive premium warehouse space located miles from the park in Anaheim, and it sits on 10.5 acres, giving Disney room to store, stage, and support a wide range of off-site operations. Disney had been renting this massive warehouse for some time, but now they've bought it. And that wasn't a new move, that was a strategic one. Because friends, when Disney decides to buy something instead of lease it, that usually means it's about to become part of a very long-term plan. They're not just solving a space problem, they're setting up the board for what comes next. So my theory is this: the warehouse behind me will absorb more backstage operations from the parks, freeing up space for future construction inside the resort. Which means we're entering a new round of Disneyland's favorite strategy, shuffling the tile on the board. One department gets moved to make space for another. One building gets cleared to unlock a future footprint. And whatever Disney can't move, they build around it. But for this moment, this is where things are shifting for good. And Disneyland has done this for decades. But this moment, it feels a little bit different because the space at the resort is almost gone. And every square foot left inside the resort is precious. This warehouse isn't just for storage, it's part of long-term strategy. So whatever Disney moves today will help shape what gets built tomorrow. Friends, this warehouse isn't just logistics, it's the first domino. And it may be the first real-world sign that Disneyland Forward is in motion. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see other videos in the Disneyland Forward series, make sure you check out this playlist right here, where I've been covering it since they announced it, getting into the deep details like no one else has. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my magic Brickey holders for making today's video possible.